Welcome back, everyone. Today, May 4th, 2025.
Yeah,
Wow, it really feels like we're living through a time of, well, massive change. Just so much going on across the board.
it really does. Constant flux.
Exactly.
Mm.
So we've got this snapshot article, The World Today, What You Need to Know, May 4, 2025. And our plan today is basically to cut through all the noise,
Mm.
try and pull out the key updates, the things you really need to grasp to understand, what's happening globally right now.
Absolutely. And it's not just about listing headlines, is it? It's about connecting the dots, seeing how things in, say, tech relate to politics or the environment.
Right.
We'll be looking at 6 main areas: global politics, tech's crazy pace, climate issues, health and wellness developments, the economy and business landscape, and culture and society shifts.
There are some surprising links in there, I think.
Definitely. Let's get into it.
Okay, first up, global politics.
Yeah.
Always a big driver. The article talks about shifting alliances and, well, definitely rising tensions in places.
Yeah, and front and center, you've got the U.S. and China, this tech Cold War they mentioned.
It seems to be really heating up.
It does. Specifically, the U.S. expanded sanctions just last month, April 2025, targeting Chinese AI and semiconductor firms. National security concerns, that's the stated reason.
And China's reaction?
Predictably, they're doubling down, accelerating self-reliance, especially in AI and quantum computing. You've got Huawei, Baidu, state-backed companies. They're all racing to develop domestic alternatives.
It's like, yeah, two separate tech ecosystems being built.
Almost, yeah. Could lead to really distinct spheres of influence down the line.
Okay, let's hop over to Europe. There's this interesting dynamic, right? Unity on some big things, but still fragmented on others.
That's a great way to put it. You see this push for more unified defense, shared digital infrastructure, things like that.
Makes sense.
But then you still have major disagreements: migration, energy policy. Those are still points of friction.
And the green tech deal, the Franco-German push.
Right, that's a big initiative focused on joint investment in green tech, renewables, hydrogen. But you've got resistance. Hungary, Poland, citing national sovereignty.
So that tension between EU goals and national interests isn't going away.
Not at all. It's a constant balancing act.
Okay, moving east, India. Seems like they're really asserting themselves more on the global stage, especially after the recent elections.
With Prime Minister Modi securing a third term, yeah, it signals continuity, likely more economic liberalization, and strengthening ties with the West, strategically.
They're hosting the Global South Summit soon too, right? July.
They are. It's a clear sign of their ambition to be, a major voice for developing nations. Plus, their space program collaborating with NASA and ESA on a Mars mission.
That's significant. Shows their growing tech power.
Absolutely. Definitely a key player to watch.
And what about Africa? The article mentions a power shift there too.
Yeah, this is interesting. The formation of a new pact: Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, a trilateral trade and defense agreement.
What's the goal there?
Seems to be aimed at boosting regional stability, coordinating policy, and also kind of pushing back against external influence, maybe reducing reliance on China and Russia.
Proactive moves.
And you also have the tech boom. Lagos, Nairobi. They're attracting serious global venture capital. Real innovation hubs emerging.
So a really dynamic picture across the globe politically.
Very much so. Constant movement.
Okay, let's shift to technology.
Yes.
I mean, the pace here feels exponential sometimes. The big headline seems to be Artificial General Intelligence, AGI. Closer than we thought.
That's the suggestion. You've got OpenAI releasing GPT 5.5 back in March, DeepMind's latest models, China's Tianshu lab, all apparently passing some pretty complex reasoning tests.
And GPT 5.5 is already being used.
Deployed in healthcare, law, even political analysis, according to the article. That suggests a level of capability that's getting closer to human-like understanding in certain areas.
But the rules, the regulations, they're lagging behind.
Way behind. You have the EU's AI Act, but implementation is tricky, and the ethical questions about AI making autonomous decisions, they're getting louder and more urgent.
It's a huge gap. Tech sprinting ahead, ethics and rules playing catch-up.
Exactly. And on a more personal level, AI is creeping into our lives differently, too. These AI companions, Replica, Meta's EmotionOS.
Yeah, what's the take on those? Good, bad?
Well, it's mixed, isn't it? The article points out they could potentially help with loneliness, offer some mental health support, especially for, say, the elderly or maybe teens.
I can see that.
But then there are the worries. Emotional dependency, becoming too reliant, maybe isolating people further from, actual human interaction.
It's a tricky balance.
Mm.
Definitely something we need to think about.
For sure, it raises big questions about connection in the digital age.
Okay, now for something potentially even more disruptive. Quantum computing. A 1,000 qubit stable processor. That sounds huge. And ahead of schedule.
Apparently years ahead. IBM and a Japanese consortium. If true, it's a massive leap. Remember, classical computers use bits, 0 or 1. Quantum uses qubits, 0, 1, or both at once.
Right, superposition.
Exactly. Which means they can tackle problems impossible for current supercomputers. A stable 1,000 qubit machine.
Wow. What are the implications?
Game-changing for things like breaking current encryption, huge cybersecurity implications. Also, drug discovery, materials science, financial modeling, it could revolutionize multiple fields.
Okay, wow. So from quantum leaps to sobering reality check, climate and environment, the big news is hitting that 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold.
Yeah, the WMO confirmed it. Global average temps exceeded 1.5 degrees C above pre-industrial levels for 12 months straight. That's a critical line crossed.
And we're seeing the effects clearly.
Oh, absolutely. The article gives examples: severe droughts in southern Europe, record heat in Brazil, terrible flooding in Bangladesh. These aren't future predictions anymore. This is happening now.
Which leads to discussions about more drastic solutions, like geoengineering.
Right. Solar radiation management, specifically. The article mentions a coalition led by Canada and Sweden actually deploying some tech.
That sounds risky.
It's highly controversial. Proponents say it's an emergency brake, something we might need to buy time while we cut emissions.
But the critics?
They're worried about unintended consequences, messing with the global climate system. What could go wrong? It's a huge gamble, ethically and environmentally.
A really tough dilemma. And meanwhile, the article says basic problems like deforestation are still rampant. Amazon, Congo Basin.
Yeah, it's grim. Despite all the pledges, illegal logging and mining are still driving massive deforestation in these critical rainforests.
The indigenous communities are fighting back, though.
They are, fiercely. And they win some legal battles, but enforcement on the ground is often weak. These forests are vital for biodiversity, for climate regulation. Losing them is catastrophic.
Absolutely. Okay, let's pivot to health and wellness. Some potential worries, but also some really interesting progress. First, this new avian flu strain, H5N8, spreading to humans.
Yeah, reported in Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Cambodia. It's a mutated strain, which is always concerning when it jumps from birds to people.
So the WHO is watching closely.
High alert, but the good news, if you can call it that, is how quickly mRNA vaccine platforms can be adapted now. We learned a lot from COVID-19 preparedness.
That's reassuring, at least.
Mm-hmm.
On the flip side, there seems to be a real shift in mental health awareness and treatment.
A huge shift, much more open discussion globally. And the article highlights the legalization of psychedelic therapy, psilocybin, MDMA in, 12 countries now? Canada, Australia, Switzerland among them.
And it's showing promise.
Really promising results for treating tough conditions like severe depression and PTSD. Of course, there are debates too.
Go ahead.
Commercialization by big pharma, ensuring access is fair, the right therapeutic controls. It's complex as it scales up.
Right. And then there's longevity science. This sounds like sci-fi territory. Gene therapy to delay aging. Age reversal.
The research is definitely accelerating. The FDA giving conditional approval in the U.S. for a gene therapy for over 60s to slow cellular aging. That's a big step.
And startups claiming even more, extending life past 120.
Yeah, bold claims coming out of Silicon Valley and Tel Aviv. Whether they pan out remains to be seen, but the direction is clear.
But that raises huge questions too, doesn't it?
Oh, massive ones. Social inequality, who gets access? Population impacts, resource strain. If we start living significantly longer, what does that do to society?
Profound questions indeed. Okay, let's connect this to the economy and business. AI is shaking things up in finance too.
Absolutely. The article describes stock markets being transformed by AI-driven hedge funds, algorithmic trading. It's everywhere.
Does that make markets more stable or less?
Bit of both, it seems. It can increase volatility sometimes, but the article also notes AI seems to be having a stabilizing effect in certain sectors. Biotech, clean energy, maybe directing investment towards longer-term potential.
Interesting. And what about crypto? After years of a kind of Wild West feel, regulation is tightening.
Seems to be crystallizing, yeah. The U.S.'s Digital Asset Fairness Act, DAFA, is mentioned as a key example, trying to bring some structure.
Is Bitcoin still dominant?
Still the main store of value, yeah. But Ethereum's expanding too. Its smart contracts are being used more in real estate, legal stuff, supply chains. moving beyond just currency.
Okay. And this idea of green capitalism, is that really taking hold?
It seems to be gaining serious momentum. ESG investing focusing on environmental, social, and governance factors is becoming mainstream.
So big money moving away from fossil fuels.
Major institutions are divesting, yes, and pouring money into clean energy, the circular economy, sustainable agriculture. Of course, there's the whole greenwashing debate. How much is real change versus just PR?
Right. Sincerity question.
But the sheer scale of the financial shift suggests something fundamental is changing in how business views climate risk and opportunity.
Okay. Shifting to culture and society. AI isn't just in finance, it's in art now. AI-generated movies winning awards.
Yeah, it's becoming much more visible. AI, writing music, novels, movie scripts, game narratives. The creative field is definitely feeling the impact.
How are traditional artists reacting?
Mixed bag, as you'd expect. Some see it as a threat to human creativity, others as a new tool to collaborate with. It's sparking a big debate about what art is.
Meanwhile, you have actual humans, particularly young people, getting more vocal.
Definitely. Gen Z, Gen Alpha. The article highlights how organized and effective they're becoming, especially on issues like climate, democracy, digital privacy.
Using platforms like TikTok.
TikTok, yeah, but also decentralized platforms like Freenet. They're mastering these tools for organizing, storytelling, and mobilizing action.
And finally, under culture, this apparent return to spirituality.
Yeah, a noticeable resurgence, both traditional paths, meditation, Eastern philosophies, and newer forms like digital spirituality.
Digital spirituality. Like what?
AI prayer apps, VR meditation temples, things like that. It seems linked to the search for meaning, mental wellness, maybe a reaction against the pace of everything else.
Seeking deeper connection, maybe?
Possibly, yeah. In response to environmental anxiety, tech overload, lots of potential drivers.
Okay, so much change, but we also need to touch on the ongoing conflicts and crises. The situation in Gaza, still fragile.
Very fragile. There's a ceasefire after the 2024 conflict, and this U.S.-Qatar initiative created a demilitarized humanitarian corridor, which is something.
But tensions remain high.
Extremely high. A lasting political solution seems elusive. Reconstruction efforts are ongoing, but the root causes aren't really resolved.
In Ukraine, stalemate.
Pretty much, yeah. A protracted stalemate, no major territory changing hands. The article does mention growing momentum for back-channel diplomacy, though.
Involving who?
Turkey, China, the Vatican are mentioned. Potential for actual talks maybe later in 2025, but it's still very uncertain.
And the crisis in Sudan and the Sahel?
That sounds horrific.
It's described as a humanitarian catastrophe, a terrible mix of armed conflict, jihadist groups, ethnic violence, and climate-driven famine.
Millions displaced. Millions. And international aid is falling short. There are serious warnings about a potential major refugee wave impacting neighboring regions and possibly Europe. Just a devastating situation.
A sobering reminder of ongoing suffering.
Eh.
Let's try and end on a more outward-looking note. Space. Seems like big things are happening there, too.
Yeah, definitely some positive momentum. NASA's Artemis IV mission successfully landed astronauts near the moon's south pole. They're starting to build the first parts of a permanent lunar base.
A moon base. And others are going to.
China has Change 8 planned. There's a private Indian mission slated for later this year. The moon is definitely getting busy again.
And Moore's dreams.
SpaceX announced plans for a crewed Mars flyby mission aiming for late 2026. Still need safety tests, obviously, but the ambition is there.
It's not just governments anymore either. The private space economy is booming.
Transformative. Satellite internet now covers over 90% of the Earth, largely thanks to private companies.
And manufacturing. In orbit.
Yeah, orbital manufacturing, making things like high-purity fiber optics, certain pharmaceuticals, even cultured meat. Things that benefit from microgravity. It's attracting serious investment.
But there are downsides. Space debris.
Big concerns. Space debris is a growing problem, and questions about unchecked commercialization, resource rights. The rules haven't kept pace with the activity, but the momentum is undeniable.
So, wrapping this all up, this deep dive into the world of May 4th, 2025. It's clear we're in a period of incredibly fast change, facing really complex challenges.
And the interconnectedness is key, isn't it? Politics drives tech. Tech impacts climate. Climate affects health and economy. It's all linked.
Absolutely. What we really hope you take away from this is how these forces are shaping our reality, globally.
And that the future really does hinge on choices being made right now by governments, by companies, by all of us, really.
Staying informed, understanding these dynamics, it's crucial for navigating this era.
Hopefully, this gave you some food for thought, maybe sparked some interest to dig deeper into one of these areas yourself. Because ultimately, understanding this complex world is the first step towards shaping a better path forward.